Welcome to another of our weekly happiness question and answer shows. Um, Big news, it's Thursdays now. So we've been going for on Fridays since the beginning, but now it's every Thursday. Don't be surprised, 7 to 8 p.m. as usual. Let me whiz through the basics of this show. So the purpose of this show is that the West is terrible at happiness, is what I've got to say about it. We've got happiness upside down. No wonder so many people are getting depressed. So the answers we give in this show are based on age-old spiritual teachings, and they're not just just believe, it's logical as well. That's what I would like to say, or at least that's what I aim to do. This is a question answer. I'm really interested in hearing from you guys. I'm very happy for you to disagree with me because it actually helps me explain things further. On our panel today, as usual, my friend Len, he's an existentialist, is a very simplified version of where Len is coming from, but just hear what he's got to say. Always, his info is in the description as usual, but what he does and how to contact him. What else? Oh yes, there's me, there's Khalid, or Khalid if you can do that. I'm a Muslim, the revolutionary type, but a good revolutionary, because my revolution is love. That's how the world is going to change. Oh yes, and today crazy project or experiment that anybody can join the show. In the description is the link. You can be on the panel if you like. What else? There's two halves. Oh my God, time's running out. We're going to answer the questions. Then we're going to have a second half with your comments, respond to your comments. Let's get going. Whatever. Maybe I should give more time for the intro. Anyway, questions coming up. So, okay, do we need religion to be good? So I always usually go first because kind of do a little intro and stuff. So I think there's a basic misunderstanding about what religion is about. Some people think it's a club. It's to differentiate between you and me, say you're better than me, or all this kind of stuff. But religion is supposed to be making life better, right? Like, religion is a set of rules that God has given, and you can follow them if you want. And God doesn't need anything from you. So God has designed you. He knows your blueprint, as it were. And he says, this will make you happy. And some people say, I know how to make myself happy, but look at the world. Look how bad we are at making ourselves happy. Depression is going through the roof. And the only thing that's making us happy is if we start looking to the research. There's a very interesting guy called Johann Hari, and everything he's saying about what actually makes us happy is just coming back to religion. Now, I made my usual mistake of not doing a quote. I'm really trying to improve on this. I'm trying to start with a quote, okay, because I don't want to make sure that this is not just me talking. So, so you will not find paradise, that is happiness. This is a quote from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from Islam. I can quote from different religions because I think Islam encompasses many religions, because we believe in all different faiths at their origins. But anyway, you will not find paradise or happiness, that means in this life or the next, until ... There are a couple of steps, but the first step is spread the greeting of peace between yourselves. Okay, now this special greeting of peace is actually common between the different Abrahamic faiths, so Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So in Islam we say assalamu alaikum, you might have heard of that, or salam, and in Judaism you say assalamu alaikum or shalom, and in English I've heard a priest say peace be upon you. So it's a common thing. Now, why did I even bother quoting this? What has this got to do with, do we need religion to be good? So we can be good by ourselves, but what religion does is teaches us things like the thing I just said, okay? That you should, when you come across somebody out in the streets, you should say peace, or hello, I wish you well. Basically, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. This little thing seems to be really small, and this is a big problem in the West because we don't know where happiness is. We think all the stuff that makes us happy, the big stuff, which doesn't really make you happy, makes you depressed, we forget that. We forget the small things that are really important. So when you recognize each other, when you actually say, "Oh yeah, I noticed that you were there," and say, "I wish you well," like mean it, that will solve so many problems. So as I mentioned, this guy Johan Hari a minute ago, right? He said connection is one of the main things that we lack in Western societies that is making us depressed. Sounds really small. It sounds ridiculously small, right? But if you go to these, I'm a big fan of these YouTube tourism travel videos, whatever. The places where people are happy is just because they recognize each other. And that's just one of the things religion teaches us in many different religions, to recognize each other, there's probably a better word than recognize, just like confirm that the person is there, right? And you smile at them. That's part of Islam, like to smile in your brother's or sister's face. That's literally a saying of Prophet Muhammad. And when you do these things, that will solve so many problems. So one of the biggest problems we have in the West is loneliness. It's actually one of the biggest killers. And you might say, how can loneliness kill people? Because when you're alone, you can't share your problems, you feel stress, it causes a lot of problems. And these small things solve all of them. So my definition of good is it makes people feel better, happier, right? And religion does that. And without religion, we don't seem to know that. We just don't even make eye contact in London. So I would say, yeah, in theory, you can ignore religion, but in practice, you need it. Go for it, Len.
My experience of this is that I've tried religion. I have done 30 years of mainstream fundamental Christianity, and at some point it no longer worked for me, to put it that way. When I arrived at that point, I started asking the questions, where to must I go next? What is the next step for me? And then the answers started coming to me. And I discovered that each mainstream religion also has an esoteric path. Now, the esoteric path is the path that takes you on the journey inward. And you have to go and search for the path within, the inner path, the inner wisdom. And in that place of searching for the inner wisdom, as they sometimes say, you go and find yourself. A lot of people go off to Tibet and they go and spend 7 years in a monastery in Tibet as a monk, and at some point they do this self-discovery, this path of self-discovery. A typical example is the movie Eat, Pray, Love. And another opportunity for people to do so is to go and in the Western mysticism, in the Native American traditions, they go into a sweat lodge where an Indian shaman, a Native American shaman, will take you on a journey into a sweat lodge. And there you can also go and discover your inner self, your true self. Now, what does this do? Each mainstream religion has its own branch, esoteric branch. In Islam, it's Sufism. In Hebrew, in the Jewish Judaism religion, it's the Kabbalistic mysteries. In Christianity, it's Gnosticism or Hermetics, or for the Hindus, it's the yogic path. Both the Hindus and the Buddhists tend to follow the yogic path, and so it goes on and on and on. Each mainstream religion has the inner path. Now, why is this important? Because we are, you don't have, you are a soul. And that is pretty much what this will reveal to you when you discover your esoteric path. It guides you to an understanding of the self. Understanding yourself is crucial, because the self is not the facade that you see. Me, Len, the person who does this by day and who works like that. The true self is much deeper than that. You've got to break through the ego. It's like peeling an onion layer by layer until you get to the core. And that's where you will find the true self, which is your soul, your source, your essence, as we say it. Now, the soul itself is a fragment of God living in you as you. You are God having a temporary, or a fragment of God having a temporary human experience in this lifetime. And that's who you truly are. that source essence. And happiness and joy in life is found by having an alignment with your true source, understanding who you are. And there is a journey that takes you on that exploration, an exploration of discovery of who you truly are. And once you decide that, your life will never be the same again. Now, I know in some Native American traditions, they take you on these retreats where you go and drink ayahuasca for 10, 15 days, and they take you to this place where you then do that level of self-discovery as well. It's like a shortcut to get you there. But you have to be ready for a journey like that. If your ego, your conscious mind, is not ready to find out who you are yet, you will be trapped in the place of the ego until you are ready to begin peeling back. You have to arrive at a place where you are ready to take that journey. So do I need a religion to be good? No, because once you are aligned with source, the divine self, your source essence, you will be in that vibrational state of being good.
Oh, thank you. Okay, here comes the next question. This is a quote from Ricky Gervais. He's an atheist comedian. Here we go. He says, "Remember, when you are dead, you do not know you're dead. It is only painful for others. The same applies when you are stupid." So maybe you get the joke. Yeah, okay. All right. You can laugh. It's supposed to be funny, right? Okay. So yeah. So just to be clear, what is he trying to say? This is what I understand. He's suggesting death is the end of it. There's nothing afterwards, and it is stupid to think that there is something afterwards. So there you go. And I think this a very common question. So, and I'm quite very interested in hearing other people's opinions in the comments, etc. But yeah, here we go. So this time let's start with a quote. So from the Quran is like the guidebook for humanity, but especially for Muslims, and in the words of God. So here we go. O people, if you're in doubt concerning the resurrection, that means the next life, then consider that we have indeed created you from dust, then from a sperm drop, then from clotted blood, then from a lump of flesh partly formed and partly unformed, in order that we may make our power manifest to you, and we cause what we will to remain in the wombs for an appointed term. Okay, so there's a lot there, and there are many different proofs that the Quran gives of the next life. Okay, some require just sort of intuition, and some, if you study a bit of science, you'll be like, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I'll especially since this is sort of like an atheist saying something, I think it makes sense to be really scientific rather than intuitive. Maybe the intuitive answer will come next in the next answer I give. So anyway, so what is this thing about this whole story about you developing from a sperm and then you becoming a baby and then you being born? What's that got to do with the afterlife? How is that any sort of proof? If you actually look at what it takes to go from one stage to the next, so sperm to baby to being born, each time it requires a sort of death. Okay, so you might not know, for a sperm to enter an egg, it needs to basically explode itself. It needs to destroy its current life to enter the next stage of life, the higher form of life. So once it enters the egg, it starts doing the splitting of cells, and it becomes like this whole different creation, a whole different level. So it takes death of a sort to get from, basically is death, and as far as the sperm is concerned, okay, it's death of the sperm's finished, and the part of what's left inside, okay, goes into the egg. So that's one example. And then if you look at this next stage, which is the baby being given birth, right? it needs to also, people might not realize or think of it like this, it needs to have a sort of death to get into this next life, right? So the baby, for all it knows, it thinks the whole universe, this whole world is inside the belly, this dark place, the eyes are closed, and all this food is coming from the umbilical cord. It needs to, and it lives basically like a fish as well, right? It's not even breathing, this baby. And then you have to undo that. You have to let go of its life source, the umbilical cord, and it has to become a new creature, open its eyes and start breathing, stop becoming a fish effectively, and come to its side. So these things are showing you that God has done this before in your own lifestyle, life, but you didn't know it because you don't remember being in the womb. You don't remember being a sperm, but we know it happened. So there's kind of logical, scientific evidence that this keeps happening, and it's happened twice already. Why shouldn't it happen again? Why shouldn't we get to a higher form? That's it.
From a hypnotherapy perspective, which is what I do, I'm a hypnotherapist. We are often required to take people into a past life, and once we take them through a past life to find and explore the areas of trauma they need to address in order to find healing for whatever medical or mental condition they're dealing with in this lifetime. One of the things we do often is to take the person through the death experience of that life. We find 3 important days for them to visit in that lifetime, and then we take them to the last day just before they die. Then we take them through the death experience, and then on the other side of the death experience, their perspective changes because now they are on the other side. They see it from a different perspective, and we ask them, what were the lessons that you had to learn in that lifetime? That has taught us that I have to disagree with Ricky Gervais here. When he says, you don't know you are dead, I respectfully disagree. All the clients that I've had where I've taken them through the death scene, they very well realize they have died. And very often they will stand back and look over the dead body of their former existence, and they will decide the body maybe was either it was a good life or a bad life, and they decide that the life was a life that they learned these lessons or they didn't learn the lessons. So the awareness, the consciousness, awareness and consciousness, synonymous. They are with the words that mean the same thing. The awareness is there that I am no longer in this body. I have left this body. This body is dead. That tells me that we are aware when we die. When you are on the other side, you will find your perspective changes. One of the important things that come about is that we realize and we remember that everything that you are, all that you are, the sum of all your lifetimes that you are, all those memories, all that information comes back to you. It is a condition of being born in the earth plane that when you come here, you forget all of who you are. And you literally have to claw your way back to a state of awareness to remember who you are. Because that in this plane, it's like having to learn things, being tested in certain things. It's pointless being tested if you already know the answers. No one's going to go and sit an exam if he is already there to know all the answers. So it's like cheating. That's not permitted. So it's one of the things we agree coming into the earth plane, that we forget all about who we are. And as soon as you pass through the death experience onto the other side, you will remember again, not only the last life that you lived, but all the other lives you've lived as well. The sum of all the information of your true self, your divine self, the God self of who you are, is back to you. You remember all of that. So unfortunately, I disrespectfully disagree with Ricky Gervais there. And Ricky Gervais will recognize this as soon as he himself goes through that death experience and he remembers his true self when he gets to the other side. Once we are on the other side, you tend to also recognize and remember everybody that played their part in that lifetime that you lived, and you will have a different view of people. If people were in your lifetime to hurt you, it was part of lessons that you have chosen and agreements that you have set with people before you entered into this lifetime. So they were all actors on a stage called your life. You created the play, you wrote the dramas, you wrote the scenery, and they all had their part to play. And that is all remembered once you go back again to the other side. And that's pretty much all I can say on the matter.
Cool. Thanks, Len. Okay. So, of course, Len and I, we know we've been doing it for so many times. We don't have to necessarily agree. The whole point is have different perspectives. So, yeah, just to remind the new people on the show what is going on, because I had a very short intro. Anyway, let's go. To accept, this is Jordan Peterson, also very famous on YouTube. He's a clinical psychologist. Let's see the quote. The quote is, to accept the terrible responsibility of life. It's gone funny again. Somehow, all these funny characters, I forget, of life means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. That's probably quite hard to absorb what he just says there. He's quite an intense kind of guy. He's a professor, so no surprise. So I'm going to do a little translation on my own. Len can do his own translation if he disagrees. But the translation I understand is basically, if you can only have a life that you are happy with if it's meaningful. And to have a meaningful life, you have to make sacrifices. So that's what I understood from what Jordan Peterson was saying. So let's give my answer. So again, quoting from the Quran about the meaning of life and how to go about it, basically how to achieve the meaning of life. There's in the Quran it says, I have created, and it's quite Arabic is quite an intense packed language, so I'm going to be kind of explaining the translations as well. So I have created the leaders, is normally called jinn, and normal men, normal people, so that they become at one with me. So I had to unpack a lot of things in that explanation. So the key thing is this word in Arabic called ibadat. It means this thing which I've loosely translated as at being at one with me. Okay, I don't want to go into the other stuff like who are these leaders and normal people, because that's a whole different story. Okay, so and it has a very exact meaning, but it's pretty long. You can fit into like 3 sentences what ibadat means. But I called it being at one. That's my I would call it Star Wars centric explanation. If you're a Star Wars fan, you know being at one with the Force is a cool thing to be. Okay, all right. It's the source of all power, and it kind of doesn't surprise me that there's my explanation is very much in line with Star Wars, because the story of Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars fan, you will know it's based on the story of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It starts off with Luke Skywalker in a desert with really bad people and all sorts of things like that. So it's related to the story, and there's all sorts of other things like the famous kind of the heroes, or the heroines sometimes maybe, are Jedi, and Jedi wear special Muslim attire from Morocco. So there's a lot of connection there. So Luke, what's his name? Lucas, whatever his name is. George Lucas is probably a closet Muslim somewhere in there. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, but anyway, let me actually give an answer. I've only got 1 minute left. So our problem with, and this is a happiness show, so the point is that this meaning of life, if you follow it, will make you the happiest you can be, because you are following the plan or the blueprint created by God. So if you're following that purpose, that meaning, you are in line with it. If you're going against it, you'll make yourself miserable. And so this being at one, what it means is a whole bunch of things. It means basically being good, because God doesn't need anything from you. And it means being good so that you become more like God. So I'm going to very quickly throw in another movie quote, which is Les Miserables. And it says, "To love is to know the face of God." And I thought that was beautiful. Like when you love people, you start being connected with God, being at one with God. That's the very short version.
Yes. For me, the understanding of what it means to accept the responsibility of life is to be able to align oneself with one's life purpose or soul purpose in this lifetime. And the reason you find a lot of people are depressed and a lot of people are living in depression and anxiety and stressful lives is because they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. There's a misalignment to one's soul purpose, to one's life purpose. And this is where it all goes wrong. The world becomes a very toxic world, unfortunately, when you are working in a place, living in a place where you are not aligned with your soul purpose, where you are not in alignment with your source, with your soul. And an interesting example I'm going to tell you that is once people are not in alignment with their source, there will be an inner conflict that is played out. There's inner drama, inner conflict. It's really stressful. Life becomes hard and difficult. And you look at someone like Adolf Hitler. I'm going to use him as an example because in the book that we read by Dolores Cannon called Between Death and Life, Between Life and Death, the example given by the Higher Self Collective is the reason why Adolf Hitler became who he became, and many people died as a result of his choices and actions, was actually his father's fault. His father pushed him into becoming something that he didn't want to become. He was meant to become, from a soul perspective, an artist. He had a great affinity for art. He could draw things. He could paint things. But his father wanted him to become a mechanical engineer or a structural engineer, a civil engineer. And it produced a lot of conflict and a lot of anger. And all that was channeled into becoming this warmonger, this person who was bent on destroying the world he lived in order to try and make it in his own perception. And this is why we saw the Second World War come about. Now, there's a lot of karmic responsibility when you have someone who goes and is responsible for the killing of someone, and it's about taking the responsibility for the karmic choices, for the ordering the mass murder of millions and millions of people. So it was very interesting to see where that was going to go, but I will leave you to read that book yourself if you want to. Now, the interesting thing from a soul perspective about understanding one's alignment with source, one's alignment with God, is that one would oneness with the divine, oneness with God, is the ultimate end goal of the esoteric path, the inner path. Most of us that embark on the spiritual path is a path that takes you through the shedding of external things, external conditions, external attachments. And once you are able to discard your external attachments to worldly things, you are able to aim for and go towards and work towards this place of oneness with the divine. And this is a very important part of the esoteric life, the esoteric path. And I do find that we tend to be at a place now on the earth plane where we've hit the bottom part of our journey as souls, and we are doing a turnaround and we are making our way back again. If you understand the Kabbalistic tree of life, you will understand that God came through the various dimensions, which is called the Zephyr, the spheres, through the 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4 to the third dimension where we are now, the third sphere, and we are doing the turnaround, and we are now working our way back up again to that place of becoming one again. It's like the Big Bang Theory. We saw everything becoming an explosion, millions of fragments expanded in all directions, and there's a point where it's going to turn around and come back again to a place of oneness.
Cool. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's green now. That means we're in the second half. We're repeating the same 3 questions, but I'm looking at the comments and trying to weave them into my answer. So we're back to, do we need religion to be good? So in my first answer, I was just saying that religion is just a guidebook to help you in life. So, and being good, in my understanding, is just stuff that makes you happier. So if you do a good thing, you'll be happy. If you're grateful, that's good. You know, you'll be happier. If you're generous to other people, you'll be happier. That's my understanding of religion. In fact, that's like what most religious people, if you ask them, that's what religion entails, being nice to each other. Yeah. So I had a comment. I'm just going to try to weave it in a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm the expert in this particular situation, because I don't know Nathan Karkis, who said, I don't feel well today. So I've taken it seriously, because maybe he's really wants to, I'm taking, I can see that it might be a joke. Yeah. But, and you can laugh, Glenn.
I've got an answer for him. So
yeah.
I'm not laughing. I'm happy to answer that one, because I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I don't feel well today, he says. I don't know why. I can't stop sweating. What should I do? So what religion does, and I'll talk specifically about Islam, it makes you really healthy. We make our lives really difficult. So we don't know, we don't really appreciate that, how the small things make all the difference. So like, how is it possible that loneliness is the biggest killer in the West? Like, how is this weird thing called loneliness affecting our lives properly so much? And it's just from people not communicating, not making eye contact. Like, these ridiculously small things have an effect on your health. So massive amount of your health problems will just disappear if we were just to treat each other like brothers and sisters, communicate, have friendly conversations. You might not even be able to believe that, right? But if you go traveling, if you're lucky enough to go to especially poorer countries where people just talk to each other, that would help a lot, right? So that's just one of the many teachings. So one of the other things Islam teaches, as well as Judaism and Christianity, is know your neighbor. So I'll just throw in another quote, because I'm really trying to be good with my quotes. Yeah, it says Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I'm trying to slow down, actually. Peace be upon him. Said, if your neighbor says you're good, you are good. If your neighbor says you're bad, you are bad. Wow. Okay. Like, a lot of people have tension with their neighbors, but if you're a Muslim and your neighbor's saying something bad to you, that's a message saying you're being a rubbish neighbor. You shouldn't have your neighbor saying anything bad about you. I go to my neighbor's house when we're celebrating anything sweet, we're saying hello. I'm the one who goes down the street and like connects people and smiles at people, just like this other thing I said, like saying hello. And people really want to do that, and they really like feel happier, right? I have a sign on my front door: love for all, hatred for none. This is a famous quote that I've been brought up on. You can Google it and find out more about what I believe. So things like that. There's some messages coming in. Life would have been left in water. Okay, cool. I'm just checking if it's not related to this one. So also things like Islam says don't drink alcohol, right? So before Islam says don't drink alcohol, it tells one of the reasons why we feel we need to drink alcohol, because we can't communicate socially. We have a big problem with that at the moment, because we don't treat each other as brothers and sisters. So Islam puts us all these different things, like encourages family networks, encourages us to go to a mosque every day so that we're close to, that's like basically a social hub, and then we don't need alcohol. And then alcohol is a deadly drug, so it can make you feel better. So my short answer is, if you do these things, maybe that health issue might go, but otherwise go and see a doctor.
Right, Nathan, there's a lot of people on the planet that's going through the same thing as you are. Since 2012, planet Earth has entered a state of consciousness, which we are calling the fourth density, the fifth dimension. And there's been a bit by bit process where we are receiving a lot of gamma ray particles being sent to the planet at this point, and it's causing a lot of people to experience something. Earth is going through this thing called an ascension at this point. Now that's going to affect all living beings, all living creatures, animals and people. And a lot of people are complaining about mild headaches, nausea, the sweats, like you are getting a sleeplessness in some cases, and they can't understand why. Now, unless it's a COVID-related issue that you are dealing with, I would say it's an ascension symptom. You can actually Google that, look at ascension symptoms, and you will see a list of that coming up. And my recommendation for you is check your diet and make sure you don't eat junk food. Cut out the junk food as best as you can. Stick to a diet of fresh fruit and vegetables if you can. Avoid heavy meats if you can, especially things like pork and red meats. That's not. You will find that as we move to the higher densities, or the lower densities, I would say, the lower densities, your dense body cannot cope with the transition because of this ascension that's currently going on, and you will probably need to drink more water. Make sure you get enough rest. Avoid excessive alcohol in this case as well. Yes, some people even started cutting out coffee because of the caffeine. They become caffeine sensitive. Some people can manage, some people don't. So have a look and see if the ascension symptoms that you have are matched up with that, and then look to see what would be the best remedy for that. But that's pretty much pointing you in the direction. You can go and explore for yourself where you want to go with it. Look at ascension symptoms and look to see what can be done to rectify it, because your body will be going through changes. We are experiencing DNA upgrades as well at this time. And I know that the COVID jab that's going around at the moment, the higher self did tell us not to take the jab, the vaccine. But if you have taken the vaccine, it may even be a result of that. But if you are not taking the vaccine, it's probably an ascension symptom. But that's pretty much all I can give you to work with at this point.
Cool. Okay, if that's all you've got to say, that's cool. So do we need religion? Because are you okay?
I'm okay. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, cool. So I'll fill in the rest of the whatever. So I talked about in a Muslim society, there'll be lots of mosques, for example. These are not just places, well, I say not just places of worship. The worship is so important for people to relax. It's like meditating. Okay, that definitely make you healthier. Like, even I call meditation the lower level sort of praying. Okay, because meditation is just stopping and reflecting. It's akin to me, in my opinion, of like sleeping, giving your body a break. Okay, so if you do that 5 times a day and you meet other people, so let me remind you, like, the stuff that really makes us happy, that's what scientists are looking at. Look at Johann Hari, Johannhari, I think, Johann Hari. Okay, but anyway, famous TED Talk guy, right? He's talking about, like, this is absolutely necessary for us. These are not small things. These are things that change our lives, right? So if you do these kind of things, they'll make you so much happier, so much more relaxed, so much more healthier. That's why we need religion. It's a very practical thing for our lives. Cool. So what's the next one? It's back to Mr. Ricky Gervais. You can read it. Basically, he says that he thinks, Mr. Ricky Gervais, an atheist, says death is the end, basically. And if you're stupid to think otherwise. Okay. And just to recap on my first answer, I said basically, if you look at science itself, you can see this sort of death to life process already happening in your life, from sperm to baby to this life, right? Now, I think sometimes I go very technical, and I'm going to try to be fun. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story about exactly the same thing I said in the first question, but let's just see if it works for you. Okay, it's something I got off the internet. It's about eventually the same story. So, life. In a mother's womb were two babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" The other replied, "Why, of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." "Nonsense," said the first baby. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "I don't know, but there will be more light than here, and maybe we will walk around with our legs and eat from our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." The first replied, "That's absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with your mouth? Ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need, but the umbilical cord is too short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded." So you can't walk around with an umbilical cord, he's saying. The second insisted, "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then life after delivery, then why has nobody ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion, and it takes us nowhere." "Well," the second baby says, "well, I don't know," said the second. "But certainly we will meet Mother, as she will take care of us." The first replied, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second said, "She's all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist." Said the first, "Well, I don't see her. It's only logical that she does not exist." To which the second replied, "Sometimes when you're," this is so beautiful in my opinion, "when you're in silence and you focus and listen, you can perceive her presence, and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above." So anyway, that was, I think, a beautiful story I got off the internet somehow, and it basically says in a less technical way what I said the first time. Got another minute. There's non-scientific answers as well, right? So the Quran also talks about this magical thing called the conscience that we all have. I was either getting tired or that story was just too good. So we've got this thing called a conscience, and the Quran said this is evidence of the afterlife. Why do we have this strange program? All us human beings, we know when we're doing right and wrong. Like when we do something bad, we can't sleep at night. There's this famous quote, how do you sleep at night, right? When you do something bad, because we understand what that means. And when you do something good, you feel better, you feel lighter, you feel happier. You'll notice that people who do good things are happier. So we have this thing called a conscience. It tells you between right and wrong. Why is it there? What's this mysterious thing? Why would a creator put it there? For you to think about.
Now I'm going to refer to one of my Kabbalistic things that I've discovered. I did discover that from the Bible, the Old Testament is heavily inspired by the Kabbalah, the esoteric Kabbalah. Although it is hidden, you have to go and look deep into the Hebrew translation to find the relevance to it. Now, the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament, in the Torah, if I want to call it that, has a verse that says, "In him we live and move and have our being." And the interesting part about this, and I'm going to relate that to fish, because fish, from what I understand, to use an analogy, the fish were all swimming happily in this water, this stream, and they were asking about water. Does water exist? What is water? Can you see the water? Prove to me that water exists. And they were having this debate in the fish community about what is water? Do we exist? Does water exist? Why can we not see water? And essentially, that same kind of debate goes on about God. Does God exist? Do we exist? Is there life after this? Is this whole thing that we are living in, is this water? We can't prove it. So what's the deal? What is there to be expected? And the whole thing came down to the accepting that God is like water. We live in God. We exist in God. Everything around us is God. In him we live and move and have our being. And that's where the fish, understanding water, they cannot see the water, but they live in the water. They exist in the water. They have their being in the water. Even if they can't see it, that's where they have their existence. And this is how God is to us. From the esoteric spirituality aspect, the Kabbalistic aspect is literally that the all that is made became aware, and in its state of consciousness, in state of awareness, it decided to create a vessel within itself, a container is the word, within itself, by which it could go and explore itself. And it's like a holographic container. And this multidimensional container is what we refer to as the multiverse, the multidimensional universe. And then all that is wanted to go into this container and explore itself through the various dimensions. And then when it went from this fourth to the fifth dimension, from the fifth to the fourth dimension, coming down this Kabbalistic container, he fragmented himself into the billions of little far sparks and fragments, which became souls. Some became galaxies, some became planets, some became entities within. But this is how he wanted to go out and explore himself, experience himself. And all of this happened within this multidimensional holographic container. So to a degree, all of this is within the mind of the all that is. From a Hermetic's point of view, they say that the universe, this reality is all mind. It's all mental. We exist within the mind of the all that is, the mind of God. And it literally is holographic by nature. And I have seen a number of articles lately on scientific publications that seem to point that from a quantum perspective, we live in a holographic universe, a holographic reality. And that is a very interesting concept to explore. But very often the constructs of this holographic world that we are living in is too complex for my little puny little mind to understand. Only from a higher mind's perspective will I be able to understand and explore that. So I'm going to leave it at that at this point. My time has run out.
Oh, thank you very much, Len. Okay, so we should be back on the meaning of life and how you do it. All right, so that's my summary again. What's Jordan Peterson, our famous clinical psychologist from Canada, got to say? He's basically saying, if you want a meaningful life, in my opinion, is what he's saying, you've got to be responsible, you've got to make sacrifices. Okay, and so I had a couple of comments on this. Hamid says that life would be boring if we didn't have to struggle. And he's made a few other comments. I think life will be quite boring and pointless. Let me just stick that on the screen, I suppose. And yeah, and he said we need a bit of struggle as well for evolution to happen. Cool. Okay, so I'll try to bear those ideas in mind. So yeah, the way I would include what you've got to say, Hamid, is that we are constantly developing, even in our very lives. So if we look at a baby, this is what I always say in every show, I suppose, if you're regular, babies poo in their pants. They nappy, right? And that's cool with them, right? But if you did that, you wouldn't feel so good, okay? Because our senses and our awareness constantly is developing. So, we're still human beings, but our soul is constantly developing. And in the Islamic idea is that it takes up to 40 years of age to fully develop your soul. So you're not even a fully developed creature in the eyes of God, or even as a soul, until you're 40 years old. That's why if you look into the history of prophets, they tend to become prophets at around the age of 40. So that's a quick thing there. So why do we need to develop? We don't develop. If you look at these self-help gurus, they'll tell you that we get really bored if we don't develop. So I totally agree with that. Yeah, what you're saying, Hamid, and that's very much in line with religion. We are constantly developing. We're constantly letting go of our ego so that we can develop. And that can be a very painful process for just about everybody, because we all love our ego. We love to be the center of the universe. But if it doesn't have to be too painful, if you can just let go. So I can see the sort of the style of what Jordan Peterson says. I think it's in some way, it is realistic for just about everybody, that it is a terrible responsibility, as it were, to take care of that life and to keep developing and having a meaningful life. It is a really difficult thing. But if you take the perspective of, for example, I'm just going to make two little quotes, I think. Let's see if I can do it. Paradise. I put them in different quotes, but paradise is the home of the generous. Okay. This is part of what is the meaning of life according to Islam, to serve humanity. In fact, God says, or Allah says, that the rights of man are greater than the rights of God. Okay, meaning God doesn't really need anything from you, right? You need to be thankful to God is for your own good. Because if you're not thankful to God, what kind of creature are you, right? God is giving you all this kind of stuff. But mostly, being kind to people will make you happier. So if you want to find a purpose, you want the simple version in 30 seconds or less, just be kind to people. Be generous. That means being kinder to people than they are to you and stuff like that. You will suddenly find that you're happier. You will be much more in line with your blueprint. Okay. But I want to go back to this being at one with God in a few seconds. When you look into the sea, and for some reason people like it's because it's unobstructed nature. You don't really get that sea on the land, because land, you fill it with buildings and stuff. Okay. To be at one with God is to be like the feeling of being at one with nature, and that will truly give you long-lasting happiness as part of that big picture.
It is true. It is possible. It is very yes. It is true that we tend to require in life tension in order to help us to grow. Life would be ridiculously boring, senselessly so, if we did not have any kind of tension to help us, to take us out of our comfort zone. This is the whole thing about it. You can only grow when you are taken out of your comfort zone. As souls, by nature, we have come here to grow. We have agreed that, and as a result, you can expect that. And how do you grow? You grow by being taken out of your comfort zone. Now, very often, you may find your situation very challenging. It all depends on what you have chosen as a soul before you arrived in the earth plane. And a lot of people have chosen very difficult situations, We know and we understand from the Higher Self Collective, in my hypnotherapy work we have done, that planet Earth was one of the most difficult schools in the universe where souls come to learn soul lessons. Really, really difficult soul lessons. There is not another school, another planetary system in the universe where you're going to learn lessons as hard as the lessons you learn now, especially because coming into this plane, you have to pass through the veil of forgetfulness. You forget everything that you are and all the contracts you've signed up and all the plans you've made to learn the various lessons. You forget all of that. So it feels like you're coming in here and all these horrible things are now happening to you, and you want to go into that victim mentality. Poor me, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But with a soul at soul level, you have already agreed to all these things before you arrived here. And through a hypnotherapy session, you can go, and even a meditative state, go and remember all these things, and it will bring you to a place of understanding where, yes, I agreed to do all these things, to go through all these things to help me. And very often within a hypnotherapy session, we talk to the subconscious and we ask, so why is so-and-so going through this really difficult divorce or this really difficult problem in their lives right now? And it often comes out that they have chosen to do this as part of their growth. They are taken out of their comfort zone because they have agreed to do this to help them grow. I have a lady who is a very dear friend of mine. She's got a severe medical condition with her spine in her back, and she can hardly walk 10 meters, and she lives in constant pain. But when I take her into a trance state, and I start talking to the higher self, there is no pain. There's nothing wrong with her. She's got no problem whatsoever. She can do anything she wants in that state. But as soon as she comes back into the conscious waking state, she's in pain. And it was something that her higher self said she chose to go through this, not only to experience it for herself, but for the benefit of those members of her family around her, so that they can all learn lessons from it and through it. Through the processes of being taken out of one's comfort zone, you create your own lessons. And those lessons can be anything. I remember once watching a training video in hypnotherapy, and one person, while before coming into the earth plane, she was with her council of seven. The council of seven helps you decide your life plan before you arrive here. And she said, I hear them say, I should go and learn betrayal, what it's like to be betrayed. And I think it's a good idea. But think about it in reality. What is it like to be betrayed? It's a very painful thing to experience. And that's part of the lessons we come and learn here in the earth plane.
Cool. Thank you so much, Len, for rushing that story. Okay, so part of this experiment today is, I don't think I've actually just got 26 seconds. I think that time is wrong. I have to adjust that one. But yeah, is to get some totally random people to answer a question. So somebody called Isa, he might be a mate of mine. I put this, I'm not sure. Isa, can you hear me? I can't see a video. No, maybe he just pressed the wrong link. Who knows? So I think I will just switch you off and I'll just do the old thank yous to everybody. So let's just get back to normal Zoom. Oh, is that it? Oh, yeah, cool. So for the last few minutes, I've got longer than usual to say thank you very much. Thanks you so much, Len. It's better to have just more than 30 seconds, I think. Yeah, did you enjoy the show, Len?
I loved it. I do love talking to people about these things. And I do find that listening to the different perspectives, you know what, it's like pieces in a puzzle. Maybe I have one piece, you have another piece, but we all build the puzzle together and we get different views put together when we bring our little pieces. I love that. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, I think that's a interesting thing about like this show somehow. Like, where instead of like you see a lot of arguing from different kinds of people and insulting, and I'm glad that doesn't happen in this show because everybody just gives like positive answers from their perspectives rather than insulting the other person's perspective. Thank you very much, all the people making comments. It's really cool. I hope we gave some sort of interesting comments. I know I kind of missed a few things. There were some cool comments. Is there life after delivery and stuff like that? That was cool. I said, I think so. And please share, like, and subscribe. It really helps if you can do that. How many seconds have we got left? Because my timer was wrong. But if you could do that, that will just, and you like this show, then it will kind of help the YouTube algorithm to encourage other people to watch as well. So thank you very much. And I'm going to end the stream. Bye. Salam. Peace be upon you. Have a great week.